Hi guys, magandang araw po sa inyong lahat, and this is Sean and welcome to my vlog, Keep It Up with Sean. So for today's video, I am going to discuss about what are the travel guide when you are traveling within the Philippines, specifically for tourists and you wanted to visit different islands in the beautiful Philippines. Uh, you know it already that effective February 10, Philippines is already open for non-Filipinos and tourists for tourism purposes. So, as I have told you, Philippines is already open for foreigners and non-Filipinos effective February 10, but then they need to provide different documents before they can come to our country. And I'm telling you also that before you can travel to different islands in the Philippines, you also have to present different requirements specific for that island. So before you can come to Philippines, you have to present these documents. So you have to present your proof of vaccination, a negative PCR test taken within 48 hours before your departure from your country. You have to present your valid return tickets to the original port of origin, your valid passport for at least 6 months, and they also now require a travel insurance for COVID-19 treatment with a minimum coverage of $35,000. So this information, guys, are you can find it in the website of Philippine Airlines. In the website of Philippine Airlines, you can find different information. So you just have to research there and you have to go through. And then they have this COVID-19 travel guide where you can find the travel rules and regulations in the Philippines. And there are three icons that you can choose. So we have there departing from the Philippines, arriving in the Philippines, and traveling within the Philippines. So if you are a tourist or foreigners that you are already in the Philippines and you would like to visit different cities or different islands in the Philippines, you just click the traveling within the Philippines, and there you can find the different requirements for each island and for each city. So for this video, I am just going to present the the travel requirement for the islands of Cebu, Bohol, Siargao, Davao, Coron, and Puerto Princesa, because these cities are very popular to the tourists and foreigners, and I hope that this guide can help you in your preparation to travel to the Philippines. And I don't want you to lose all your money and all your effort just because that you did not meet some of the requirements that are needed for these islands. So I hope this video is going to help you guys, and right now I am thanking you for watching this video. See you. So now we'll go to Coron in Palawan, and the airport there, guys, is Busuanga. So actually this video is inspired by the vlog of Meet the Nomads, because they went to the Philippines, and they were already in the Philippines and they wanted to go to Coron, but then they did not know that there are a lot of requirements required for the city of for the province of in Palawan, particularly in Busuanga, which is in Coron. So that's why I made this video, because I don't want other foreigners who will experience the same experience that they had. So that's why I'm making this video. So for tourists, so for people who are going to visit Busuanga in Coron, they only allowed tourists and inbound passengers, but you need to meet the specific requirements before going to go there. So tourists are allowed if they are fully vaccinated. And these are the requirements for tourists. So meaning you have to be fully vaccinated if you wanted to go to Busuanga or Coron. So all tourists should be fully vaccinated. If you are not vaccinated, then you are not allowed to go to Busuanga or Coron. So these are the requirements for travelers going to Busuanga in Coron. So you need to present your valid ID, approved S-Pass, COVID-19 vaccination card, negative antigen test, result taken within 24 hours from the DOH accredited laboratory prior to boarding, confirm hotel, tour, or diving booking itinerary, and round-trip ticket from the Busuanga. So those are the requirements if you are tourist planning to go to Coron, Palawan. If you are inbound passengers, like you are local or you are residents of that part in Coron or in Palawan, of that part of Palawan, returning residents or returning overseas Filipino workers, and authorized person of outside residents outside Palawan, then you need to present these documents for you to be able to visit the island. So you have to present your valid ID, approved S-Pass, your vaccination card. So all vaccinated minors and inbound passengers will be required unvaccinated. So meaning you need to present your vaccination card, but then if you are not vaccinated, but then you live in that island, you're not vaccinated or unvaccinated or partially vaccinated, but then you are a resident of Busuanga or Coron, or in that part of Palawan, you can still enter the island, but you need to submit yourself to the 7 days quarantine and will be required to undergo an antigen test on day 7 free of charge. And for unvaccinated minors, home quarantine will be required. And for unvaccinated adult, home quarantine if house is suitable or any LGU identified facility. You need to also present your negative antigen test result taken within 48 hours and certificate of coordination from the EOC of Coron. So, if you are returning residents of Coron, returning overseas Filipino for Coron, and authorized person outside residents from outside Palawan, you need to present your valid ID, your approved S-Pass, and your vaccination card. So in case you are not vaccinated or partially vaccinated, you need to submit yourself to home quarantine for 7 days and undergo an antigen test on the 7th day free of charge. So for unvaccinated minors, home quarantine will be required, and for unvaccinated adult, home quarantine if house is suitable or any LGU identified facility. You also need to present your antigen test taken within 48 hours and certificate of coordination from EOC Coron. So, if you are tourists, returning residents, returning overseas Filipino workers, and authorized person outside residents within Palawan, except Calamayanes Island, regardless of vaccination status for adults or minors, a negative antigen test is required, which is taken 24 hours before your arrival. All unvaccinated adult and minors will be required to undergo home quarantine for 7 days and will be required to do an antigen test on the 7th day free of charge. So for tourists, quarantine is not required, and for unvaccinated minors, home quarantine will be required, and it can also be done at home if house is suitable or any LGU identified facility. So what about if you are going to Culion, which is another part of in Coron? So these are the requirements for locally stranded individuals or returning residents of Coron. So you need to present your valid ID, an approved S-Pass, and vaccination card, a negative PCR test or saliva taken within 72 hours, or negative antigen test taken within 24 hours, acceptance letter from your government, and quarantine for 7 days for unvaccinated or partially unvaccinated individual. For returning overseas Filipino, so you need to present your valid ID, approved S-Pass, vaccination card, certificate of quarantine from Bureau of Quarantine, acceptance letter from the EOC of Coron, and quarantine for 7 days for unvaccinated, partially vaccinated individual. And if you are authorized person outside residence, so you need to also to present your valid ID, approved S-Pass, vaccination card, negative PCR test, company travel order, acceptance letter from the EOC of Coron, quarantine for 7 days for unvaccinated, partially vaccinated individual. And for the tourists visiting Coron, if you are already in Palawan, you need to present your valid ID, approved S-Pass, acceptance letter from EOC of Coron, and vaccination card with QR code. Only fully vaccinated individuals are allowed to travel if you are a tourist. So that's all for Coron, which the main airport is in Busuanga. Okay, so now we'll go to Puerto Princesa. So Puerto Princesa in Palawan is also one of the major tourist destinations in Philippines. And a lot of foreigners would like to go there and visit this beautiful island of Palawan. But then you have to know that before you enter the province, you need to present, you should be fully vaccinated. So you are not allowed to enter the province if you are not vaccinated or partially vaccinated. And you are required to take an antigen test taken within 1 day before your flight. And these results are strictly validated upon check-in. So passengers bound for any municipality in the province may take any flight of Philippine Airlines. So for the returning residents of Puerto Princesa in Palawan, these are the requirements for fully vaccinated individuals. You need to provide your proof of residency. It can be valid ID card with Puerto Princesa address or barangay certificate, an airline ticket, an approved S-Pass, and vaccination card, a negative antigen test taken within 1 day, and a mandatory strict home quarantine for 7 days. For unvaccinated or partially vaccinated individuals, but they are residents of Puerto Princesa, they have to provide their proof of residency through valid ID card with Puerto Princesa address, barangay certificate, airline ticket, approved S-Pass, and negative PCR test taken within 2 days. So that's the requirements for returning residents of Puerto Princesa. If you are an authorized person outside residence staying for more than 5 days in Puerto Princesa and you are fully vaccinated, you need to present this document: valid ID, vaccination card, a negative antigen test taken within 1 day, an approved S-Pass, a travel or company order allowing you to visit Puerto Princesa, and a mandatory strict hotel or quarantine for 7 days, an antigen test on the 5th, 6th, or 7th day of arrival to be scheduled by the monitoring and surveillance group. If you are unvaccinated and partially vaccinated individuals and you are a returning resident of Puerto Princesa, you need to provide a valid ID, a negative PCR test taken within 2 days, an approved S-Pass, and a travel or company order. And there is a mandatory strict hotel facility for 7 days at your own expenses and an antigen testing on the 5th, 6th, or 7th day upon arrival to be scheduled by the monitoring and surveillance group. And if you are an authorized person outside residence but you are staying in Puerto Princesa for less than 4 days and you are fully vaccinated, you need to present this document. So you have to present your valid ID, an approved S-Pass, travel or company order, vaccination certificate, and a negative antigen test taken within 1 day. And if you are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated individual, an authorized person outside residence and staying for less than 4 days in Puerto Princesa, you need to provide the following: valid ID, approved SPAS, travel company order, vaccination card certificate, negative PCR test taken within 2 days, and a detailed itinerary. So it's very, very tedious, guys. So I really recommend that you visit the website of Philippine Airlines because they have their very intensive information about the requirements of each provinces. So that's for Puerto Princesa. Now, what will you present if you are going to visit the province of Palawan? So the returning residents and returning overseas Filipino worker bound for the province of Palawan, for fully vaccinated individuals, they only have to present the valid ID, negative antigen test results taken within 24 hours, approved SPAS, vaccination card or vaccination certificate from the certificate, and for unvaccinated and partially vaccinated individuals, they have to provide valid ID, negative RT-PCR test, and approved SPAS. And for the tourist, so if you are a tourist and you would like to visit the province of Palawan, you should be fully vaccinated because you cannot enter the province of Palawan if you are not vaccinated or just partially vaccinated. No, I'm wrong. Okay. For tourists, so these are the requirements for tourists who would like to visit the province of Palawan. So if you are fully vaccinated, you need to present your valid ID, you need to present your vaccination card or vaccination certificate, and you have to present your approved SPAS, which is a travel coordination permit. And if you are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated, you need to present your valid ID, a negative PCR test result taken within 72 hours before your arrival, and approved SPAS that you have to get from the travel coordination permit. So that's the requirement if you wanted to visit the province of Palawan.